You're listening to DrachenPod, the official podcast of DrachenFest US. Please share, like, review, and subscribe to help our community of champions grow. Learn more and secure your tickets for this incredible experience today at DrachenFest.us. DrachenFest US, the largest festival LARP in the United States. Each June, more than 1,200 attendees spend 4 days in Pennsylvania, role-playing fantasy characters engaged in immersive gameplay, experiencing celebrations, battles, stories, and medieval life. You have answered the call, and your adventure begins now with this episode of DrachenPod. Welcome to DrachenPod, the official podcast of DrachenFest US. I'm Ryan Faricelli. I'm the marketing coordinator for DrachenFest.
I'm Carie Varner, and I'm the design lead for Limbus.
And I am Jason Hughes, the coordinator for Limbus.
And we're here to talk about DrachenFest and about the experience leading up to it and what people can expect to find there and how they should prepare and hopefully just kind of answer questions that folks might have about just what this huge event is like.
You may recognize us from On a Roll podcast, in which we used to talk about how to run better games and how to play better games. But now we've become intrinsically linked to the Dragonlands, our souls bound to its service.
Yeah.
Who are we joined by today, Ryan?
Today we're going to be joined by Dan Comstock, and he's going to tell us all about what he does and talk a little bit about just what DrachenFest US is and how it came to be.
He's the event director, is that correct?
That's right.
Sounds good.
Let's head to the summoning circle and bring forth our champion.
Let's do it.
I summon into the podcast the one whose vision and perseverance established DrachenFest US. The one whose leadership guides the event experience. The one whose heart is driven by a passion for fun. I call forth Dan Comstock. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
That's awesome. You're coming to us from a very haunted place, I hear.
Yeah, I live in Sleepy Hollow, New York. And I live in a very haunted part of it. It's very spooky and ghosts are everywhere.
That's kind of fitting, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dan, what is your role with DrachenFest?
I am the event director. So I manage the player experience while you're at the event, which is the competition, the battle, the sandbox plot, the role play, and a lot of the experience in the camps, and a lot of stuff. I do a lot of setup for the event. I'm part of a large team. I lead the event part of it, but there's a bunch of us that produce it.
So you're kind of the 40,000 feet guy.
Yeah.
What is DrachenFest then? Let's just jump right in and tell us what this festival LARP thing is that you're doing.
All right, DrachenFest. So we get this campsite for a whole week. We get a ton of people to show up. Last year we had about 1,200 people.
Holy cow!
For the whole week, people dress up as fantasy characters that they make up themselves. It's your fantasy character, not like you're playing as Link or from some IP. But you make up you bring your D&D character or a character from another LARP or whatever, and you play as this character for a whole week. So while you're at DrachenFest, most of the players are in one of the 5 dragon camps. They serve these 5 different colored dragons. Each dragon is one of the gods of this dragon world, and they have their own themes. And these dragons are in competition. The players spend the whole week playing capture the flag against each other and going to tournaments and engaging in plots and quests and doing all this like fun role play narrative stuff. A lot of it earns their teams dragon eggs. And whatever dragon has the most eggs at the end of the week is named the ruler of the dragon realm for the coming year.
Where does an idea like this even start? Where does that come from?
All right, so LARPing is been around for, since like, I guess the 80s in America,
Sure.
late 80s.
What was your first LARP?
My first LARP, my friends and I had not heard of LARP, and we just started playing in our backyard with sticks, and that eventually, then we heard about Nero, and I got swept up into that for many years. But my first LARP was an outsider LARP where we just kind of made up what we thought playing
Sure.
D&D in person would be
Yeah.
like, and
So at some point you heard about something like a DrachenFest.
right.
somewhere.
So over in Europe, there are these huge LARP events like Conquest and DrachenFest that get thousands of people at them. I attended Conquest and DrachenFest. I fell in love with DrachenFest. I was really like DrachenFest Germany at this event with 7,000 plus people at it.
Wow.
And it's huge and it's so nuanced, and it's like, just like when people go to like Burning Man and stuff like that, like they bring these like sets with them and they bring these like great outfits and costumes, and everybody's been doing that over and over and over again, and it gets more elaborate and cool. And 20 years later, it's like really rich. And I don't know, it was just such a cool experience. I was like, what they're doing over here is magic, and we would love it in America, but nobody's doing anything like this. So I began this multi-year quest to try to start an American LARP festival and put together this kickball team of other people that are great at doing these like big events. Some of them are from the DrachenFest Germany team. They allowed us to license their IP, so we're kind of like the little sister of DrachenFest Germany, much smaller, but eager to be here. And so there's a big one over there, and we're kind of inspired by that. We start from the same premise as it, but we are kind of an independent thing.
How many folks did you have at DrachenFest US last year?
We had about 1,200 people on site.
Wow, that's crazy. That's probably the biggest event of any type I've been at, not just a LARP.
And how many years now have you been doing it?
This is the 5th year. Well, this coming summer will be year 5. Yeah, 2026.
So it'll be June what this year? Huh?
June 22nd through 28th.
Wow.
2026.
Wow.
So you've created this United States version of it. Tell us now a little bit about like what is the story, right? Because I know one of the things you mentioned a minute ago was that people can bring characters from anywhere. You said they could bring their D&D, right? So how does that work and fit into what is the DrachenFest US in-game story?
So you, if you have an existing character that you're bringing to DrachenFest, like you play them at some other LARP, or maybe they're a D&D character that you want to try playing as for a whole week, or it's just a character that you came up with that doesn't live anywhere else but your head.
Sure.
So your character hears this call. We call it the call. It's this metaphysical communication that goes out. All the dragons join their voices and they call out for people that would come and attend them in this and serve them in this big war that's about to happen. And each of the dragons is like kind of the god of a different domain. And so your character experiences all this, and then whatever dragon kind of calls out to them the most, that resonates with them the best, you are generally join their camp and serve that dragon in the DrachenFest. So if your dragon wins, then you're part of the group that gets to rule the realm for the coming year. And you get a little piece of land in the game world if your dragon wins.
It's about having a narrative victory, not a mechanical one. Like, as in, like, yes, the number of dragon eggs wins, but the big prize at the end is really just this narrative thing of your dragon gets a little bit of honor and a little piece of land in the dragon world.
Exactly. We like to say that, the competition between dragons, and there's a lot of different ways that you can compete and clash with other people, but it's we only role play that it's really important. We love it how, in a fantasy movie, your characters are really motivated and they're really passionate and they really hate the other guy. But like out of game, we all buy into the reality that this is really just like a way to have fun for a week together in the summer.
It's really like the excuse to get all the characters in one place.
Right.
It's not actually the plots that characters will necessarily be pursuing.
We're really just role playing that we really care which dragon wins. And at a game, we know that it's, on a real world level, it's just about like fun to get in fights with each other. And the prize for winning doesn't matter that much. It doesn't get the team anything like out of game. It doesn't even really represent that you're like the best team. It just meant you played the game really well that year. And so, it's kind of low stakes, even though in universe it's the highest possible stakes, and it's end of the world consequences if the wrong team wins. And we like having a lot to role play around it. Really, all of that is in service to just being able to play with each other and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it never gets too real.
And I love that after the final battle, there's almost always this like festival-wide party to celebrate that we had this competition, and whoever won, that we celebrate them as a group, and also celebrate the fact that I get to be part of this great conflict, and go have a couple of drinks together, or just go have a meal together as a group instead of as just individual camps again.
It's interesting because the competition is not about like killing the other army.
It can be.
Well, it can be. But ultimately, though, like winning the festival by collecting the most eggs is not necessarily contingent upon destroying the other armies in battle.
Right.
It can be, but it doesn't have to.
And the team that wins isn't necessarily the team that had the best time playing. A lot of times the team that placed dead last had the best time doing it. Yeah. And so the competition's there, but it's only a set piece, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a creative festival. Like there's the competition, but there's so much else happening. Like I said, I think the most interesting stuff at the festival is often just the weird events and ideas that players bring to it, the different enterprises that they have. Like they'll run businesses and set up little shops and sell services or goods for coins. And there's so many weird things you can get by walking around the bazaar that it exists in a fantasy world, not just like a Ren Fair market, like turkey legs and stuff, but like how you can, get a cup of coffee that also curses you.
Right. Right.
So there's a bazaar. Like, explain that a little bit more.
So in addition to the 5 dragon camps, there is also the bazaar, which is like our little Ren Fair on a hill. It has vendors that you can buy real world food and garb and stuff like that from using real world money. And also the awesome latex weapons that we whack each other with all week. Also in-game enterprises, like groups of players that have started businesses that sell, like mercenary services or fortune telling, or, there's like all sorts of little services that players have come up with that you can get from wandering around the bazaar and talking to people.
And that's bought with in-game coins.
Right. Yeah. Your real world money is no good there. You just the in-game coins of the world are what you use to pay for services and enterprises. And there's also guilds. There's groups of players that kind of like get together and cultivate the way to role play a spellcaster or there's a fighters guild. There's a magic guild, a bards guild, there's about 7 of them. And they each one has its own cast of characters that like teach classes that anyone can sign up for with a couple coins. Some of those classes have like unlockable skills behind them. Like if you can take like a class in lock picking, and then your character can now pick locks.
But these classes are actually taught by other player characters, and they spend an hour telling the history of the skill or the spell or whatever it is that your class is on, right?
Yeah, a lot of the classes aren't like lectures. They're like these little interactive adventures.
Like a role-play workshop.
Like a little, the alchemy gardening group will go on little field trips to look at plants, and weird stuff will happen. Or a lot of the bard classes are little seminars and doing street music and like playing in like strange situations. It's really, interesting stuff.
I love that it's like 5%, hey, here's a mechanical skill you might get, and 95%, hey, here's an amazing role play experience that you get to be participating in with other players.
One of the things that I'm kind of hearing is that while there is a large boffer LARP component to this, hitting each other with foam weapons, that's not necessarily the bulk of the interactions folks will do. Or some people could, I guess, choose to never
pick, right?
To never swing a weapon.
Right.
I go fight, or
a lot of people do not compete in the war. A lot of people never get in a battle. People still have a very fun DrachenFest, just hanging out and doing their own plot and socializing, or running their own enterprise or little organization.
That's one of the things I love about DrachenFest. not quite, but a little bit all things for all people. Like if I want to go there and just have role play experiences the whole time and be a diplomat or be a merchant or start a little cult or something, I can do that. Or
Of course, Jason wants to start a cult.
Or I can go fight all weekend in all these battles, or I can do any combination of the two that I want all weekend. One of the things that I love about DrachenFest is that I brought two people to it that had basically zero boffer experience. Carie had a little bit in college.
Just a little bit.
And
I never had boffer LARP experience when I came.
And after the first game, they're like, oh, I get this. Yes, I will enjoy this even if I never hit anybody.
Because let's be honest, I'm old and my knees will not let me
You don't wanna be in a
do that
siege?
final battle.
I kept thinking, I don't want some 19-year-old jock swinging a weapon at me at my 51-year-old legs.
But at the same time, you can still have a good time going around and even participating in the battle some if you want to.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Dan, tell us a little bit about what can players be at DrachenFest when they're making characters? Is there really any limitations?
You have to need to be a fantasy character. You can't be from the real world either. You can be from a fantastic analog of the real world, but we try to keep the real world a little bit out of it and the real world history. Some parts of it are a little too sharp to.
Right.
Like I said, you build your character mechanically by choosing two roles that off of a list that give you kind of different parts of the game that you can interact with. But no, in terms of like any D&D character, any like weird fantasy character, the real limitation is what you can depict. Like you can't play a giant unless you can somehow show yourself as people would look at you and go, yeah, that's a giant,
Right.
Maybe you're a giant that drank a shrinking potion. You look like a person. You can convince people you're a giant, but it won't really work unless they see it.
Sure.
They won't treat you like a giant unless they see it. Really,
So,
figure out a way to present it. They will treat you extremely like a giant.
this is very much full immersion. What you see is what you get. We're not going to be wearing tags that say like
Suit times 4.
Expensive business suit times 4
Or
in our
plate
t-shirts and
armor.
jeans.
I like to say that really the most important rule of the festival is just about reacting to each other, because that's really where a lot of story comes from.
Right.
And so the
yes
big
and.
rule is if somebody does something, you give it a reaction. When we react to something, it pulls it more into reality. You could just be like kind of talking to yourself, and when somebody like gives like a fictional reaction to it and like calls you out at it or something, you've suddenly made a little bit of, it could be a story if it falls into line with a couple other little things, but everything from small things to big things, if we just react to them and we make them a little bit more real, then it starts to feel like we're really in this fantasy world. And after a few days at DrachenFest, it really starts to feel like all the little parts inside the fiction feel very immersive. They feel really like, it's like nothing else in the real world feels like it. To be worried about your camp getting attacked and, mages doing a ritual that, confuses our warriors and, all this like weird fiction stuff. It just, to actually be inside of it and feeling it in 3D rather than in like a tabletop narrative or, reading about it in a book. It's,
because people are sleeping in game, many of them in period appropriate tense, right?
Right.
And that's not a requirement, but many choose to.
Yeah.
So let's say I wanted to play a vampire. Like, how can I do that? What are the mechanics for like, drinking blood, like those sorts of things?
Yeah.
Right. So under that rule of if you do something, people will react to it and you give the proper reactions. So, how do you think of a vampire in terms of that? It's somebody that is, hungry for blood that, would you think about role-playing drinking blood from a victim, that there's also like a consent-driven way to do that so that you're not just like putting your mouth on some stranger's neck.
Right.
But like, you kneel and do a little pantomime, and maybe do a little check-in to make sure they're okay with you being that close,
Right.
and then you role-play drinking their blood in a way that feels kind of cool within that scene.
Maybe you have a mug of like fruit punch or something.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you have some props or fake blood that you can, make it look cooler. Like that kind of stuff really brings the LARP experience to life. And, what else is a vampire? Like you react big when somebody, indicates that they've got garlic, or, holy water, or, all that vampire stuff. Like if you play into that fiction, people will think of you as a vampire and you're a vampire now. And so it's not really about the mechanics and the hit points and, what abilities does a vampire have? It's really about like, how are you going to present a vampire in a LARP that people are going to get and be able to play with?
And in my experience, the more you react to other people, the better they react to you, because you're making it fun to play with them. So they want to play with you and have fun too.
Right.
What can characters do at this LARP? So I have a character. I've created it from my tabletop game at home, let's say, and I'm bringing it to DrachenFest. What am I going to do when I get there?
It really depends on what you're interested in.
Well,
there's so many different parts of the experience. Like I said, part of it is camping out. You'll set up a tent, you'll meet your neighbors, you'll figure out what the local news is and what's going on in your camp. And there will be a lot of opportunities to get involved in your camp army or, different plots and quests that may be happening. And a lot of the plots and quests are just characters at the event that have some motivation and are trying to get something done and they need help and they wrap other people up into it. And, so we're going to go spy on this other camp and play, all this other stuff.
Let's say my Dungeons and Dragons vampire, I don't know, because that's what we're talking about. Like, if I come into the game, I can come in with like a goal in mind that I don't necessarily have to like email a storyteller ahead of time and get all these permissions or anything. Like if I want to come in and be like, somewhere out there is a cross that I'm able to hold and it doesn't burn me, and I'm looking for that. Like at some point I could just get people together to help me look for other players who maybe have props that are crosses and see if they'll let me touch it and if it'll burn me or not. Like, I mean, like, is that kind of how some of the plot works?
A lot of people who make their own plot, will either come up with like kind of a quest for other people to do, or they will have something, character driven that they are exploring in the game. And then this is, it's optional. Like some people do this, a lot of people don't do this, but one of the dishes at the buffet table is exploring your character backgrounds and your character's inner conflict and stuff like that at the festival. Right. You can have a really good time with like, all right, I'm a paladin and I've broken my vow and I've got to find someone who will help me atone, and I got to figure out how to atone, and come up with a little story for yourself that involves finding stuff at the festival, having your opinion made up by events that happen to you. A lot of people end up with like very rich personal experiences from DrachenFest that really feel like this complete package of a story because they went into the festival with a goal and they explored it and they let their made fiction choices about how their character is going to get changed by this. What does it mean when this group accepts me? How does it change who I am? And how do I express that change now in terms of my like costume or like, do I do something that brings that into the fiction? And so that's just people LARPing with each other at the festival. It's a really cool environment to have those kind of play experiences. So talking about it almost makes it seem kind of esoteric, but like in the environment when you're around people, it feels very natural to just kind of talk about the fiction.
Sure.
So what you're saying, it's lots of yes and.
Yeah.
It's lots of lifting of other players.
Say that this guy's coming and he's never played a Boffer LARP before. Maybe he has some idea about what roleplay is like. He's got his costume. He's decided to join one of the camps. Day one, what two pieces of advice would you give that person to get involved?
The game is only a week a year. Right.
So what do you tell that person? Hey, you're showing up. What do you go do first?
So how do I just show up for 1 week a year?
So that new player, what do you tell them to do to get started?
One is if you're really lost, talking to your camp refs can really help. Okay. Every camp has referees in it. They have a really good understanding of a lot of the different things that are going on at the festival, and they can kind of help steer you. So if you really don't know anything and you're like, I want to get into a fight, how do I do that? The camp ref can kind of talk to you about how to get involved in the stuff that you want and give you a little map to get there.
Is a camp ref, so a camp referee is not just about adjudicating rules calls. I mean, they do that, but you're saying they're also a little bit kind of like your first step in the storyteller lab.
Right. Every camp has referees. They sit at kind of a desk near the entrance to the camp. They're they're outside the atmosphere a little bit. They can help you with all sorts of things. They can help you with if you don't know where like the bathroom is, if you don't understand how a rule worked, if there's something that you saw something that you want to report, you can talk to them. But one of their duties though is helping you kind of design your own festival experience and have a satisfying story play while you're there. So you can go up to them with something that you're interested in doing, and they will kind of like workshop with you, how to accomplish that by yourself. And it's not like like they will run like a specific story for you, but they will kind of teach you how to set up play experiences for yourself that a story will kind of, it may feel like a story at the end. Like there's no scripted scenes at DrachenFest. It's just people, a lot of things are just wild stuff bouncing into each other and people reacting. So I'd say that's the referee system is like a really good compass. Also finding players that are doing stuff that you're interested in and going up and engaging them, especially if you're new. People are really eager to show each other around and teach each other about the festival, and people are really eager to share their knowledge. It's a low social boundary game. Like it shouldn't feel weird to just walk up to a group of strangers and begin talking. It's actually very normal at the festival. It's very like open socially.
So are there places that you could go to talk to those players? Like if I'm brand new, I don't want to just kind of like eavesdrop on people. Like where would I go to talk to to other characters to find out these things?
Well, a good place to start in the camps are going to have camp meetings where players come and they give an overview of what's going on and talk about different opportunities for play and, different things that you can help the camp out with. Every camp is its own little village. They also have leaders that are selected at the beginning of the game. So there's like a high council and there's a war master, a spy master. Yeah. So there are also player leaders that are like organizing a certain type of play within the camp, and they will try to make themselves visible to everybody in the camp. And at some point someone will say, if you want to get in battles, I'm the general, come sign up over here. Right. And we'll make sure you get put into a fight group or whatever.
Most camps have like a bar or a restaurant or some sort of like tavern gathering place as well, too.
Hangout.
Correct. Yeah. Every camp does have taverns and social spaces and places where players are just hanging out, as well the bazaar.
Yeah, I was going to say the bazaar even has like a billboard, right? People will post things.
Schedule of events in town, and one side of it has like the kind of like official like the guild and tournament schedules, and the other side of it has just whatever players have planned and whatever
right.
crazy stuff happens. So like and it fills up. It is, you can go there and you're looking for something to do at 3:30 on Thursday. Yeah, there's a parade. There's a like a tournament. There's a there will be like all these different things.
And if you wait a day, I know there's also a newspaper that gets printed, right?
That's right.
And they'll print like things that are needed or wanted to.
And that's totally player run.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an enterprise, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a player run newspaper, yeah.
There are a lot of things, it sounds like, that makes DrachenFest different from other LARPs. One of the biggest differences that I'm hearing is that when you have 12 people at a parlor LARP, you have lots of storyteller, game runner interaction and time. I always think back to my early vampire LARP days where you'd go to, one game that was like 20 people, and then there was another game that was 100 people, and the amount of storyteller time you got and the player generated story happening was wildly different. You're talking about 1,200 people all working together to create just this experience, and it sounds incredible. Can you share with us a little bit about that uniqueness?
I think it's the atmosphere of it is really wild. And there's a lot of events in America that are like fighting based, where people put on armor and whack each other. I love the fantasy elements within that. I love the how accessible it is. Like at a lot of games, like you have to be like actually like kind of physically tough to go into combat because you're going to get hit really hard. And like it's acting combat. Like sometimes people get really excited and they'll hit pretty hard with a latex weapon, by mistake. But that's not the norm at the game. Like, lightest touch, we say, it's theatrical. It's really more about like delivering a hit and then people giving a big reaction. The theatrics of combat is a big thing. Like we also have a lot of, I'd say, immersive healing role play, where when someone's getting treated for their injury, it's a scene with, stitches and fake blood and, props. And it's a little bit more mundane healing than, you wiggle your fingers and the wounds are knitted and that's over. There's like a lot of role play of recovery that makes the atmosphere really intense. It kind of sets a stake for battle that you feel like people role play injuries, and after a battle, people are limping and, oh, that was a tough one. missing fingers and, whatever. It's a lot of, we really put the role play of combat in the foreground of it, more so than it being like a sport.
Right.
So I think that's a little different, like, approach than a lot of games.
So someone not good with a sword could actually still play a master swordsman.
If you wanted to role play somebody that's hitting really hard and they're really strong, it's more about your body role play and, does your, then it is about like a mechanic or skill that you call. If you hit somebody with a big hammer with a big heave, even if it hits their shield, often they're going to get stagger back, even though the rules don't say that you have to do that, but it's something that makes the game feel more real, and people are really generous with each other with those kind of moments. So that makes the combat atmosphere feel different, I think, than reenactment events or a lot of like quick light touch popper or medium impact, dagger hero type games. It's definitely its own combat vibe.
One of the big differences I think of is that a lot of LARPs are sort of like tabletop, as in I am consuming the content that the staff is providing, and it feels like a DrachenFest. I'm not consuming content. I'm creating as much as I'm consuming it. I'm part of this big story. I'm not a consumer of it.
Right. I was talking to a referee whose mind was blown when the first battle he saw where somebody did a really cool gust of wind spell, like, and he throws like leaves into his like this fan, and he's fanning it, but like his role play of the spell is like really, really over the top and striking, and it really sells that he's casting a spell really well.
Right.
And very often, even the spell's like only supposed to affect like a couple people. Like it will affect like 10 people will get blown back 10 feet because they see somebody role playing like that, and they're like, it would be really fun to just get thrown with the wind, to get hit with a hurricane force wind after that presentation. The way to become a more powerful magician is really about, learning how to sell magic better and make bigger role play effects and give people a bigger prompt to role play against. And I think that's a really special thing about it too. We don't have experience points. There's not like a character progression where the more DrachenFests you play, you're going to have, 20 more hit points and you're going to win more battles through it. Like, yeah, we play one event a year and you can get some guild skills, but like you don't have this like continual progression of character power where like there are high level characters and low level characters. Yeah, everybody can kind of play with everybody. It's kind of flat. And it's really much more about the role playing surrounding all the combat and the war and the...
Yeah, I guess if I don't have a bunch of experience points to spend to buy more stuff on my sheet, then I can see how like instead the way to get bigger is to role play bigger.
And that being said too, like I think it's still like a fun game to play if you just kind of want to play war games with people and march in an army and get into big clashes. Like I'm really emphasizing a lot of like the role play and story, but like that's also just one of the dishes at the table that you can have. Right. Or a lot of people don't touch it, and they love being part of an army and fighting with their friends and going back to the camp and having a beer and
right.
Just that whole lifestyle of being a soldier in a fantasy army that can be a whole week that you can enjoy with your friends, and you don't need all the story stuff other than what story your group has.
Sieges are a huge deal, aren't they?
Yeah, sieges are a lot of fun.
So what is a siege?
So every camp has gates that they build together at the beginning of the week.
Like they come in U-Haul trucks, right?
Yeah, people haul in all this stuff, and every camp builds this, they have this big archway, this big wooden door, and it's all decorated, kind of themed like the camp. People will also bring armaments, these large monster costumes and siege equipment, war machines like catapults and cannons, but they fire like kickballs. And then so siege play is about people wheel their catapults and cannons and battering rams and stuff up the hill up to the camp, and you play batter the door for a certain amount of time, and depending on how long you batter, eventually the door will get burst open and your army will charge in, and there will be a big fight between the defending army and the attacking army. They try to hold the attackers off. If the attackers win, they get to come in and take the camp's banner and march it home, and then there's usually a big celebration. So that's part of the big capture the flag game.
Right.
Yeah, the siege is an exciting moment. It's very immersive. The siege is like a lot of like you're waiting for the immense amount of violence to happen any minute now. And so you're standing with your friends in your courtyard, and then it's this huge fight. Everybody's really excited, and then there's everybody afterwards is lying around bleeding and getting stitched up and, talking about it.
We'll talk about this a lot more in a later episode, but I feel like this is a good time to just sort of ask, like, can my character be killed in one of these sieges? And if so, am I out of luck for the rest of the game?
Yeah, you're dead. You're gone forever.
Womp womp.
So in our world, these dragons know that nobody would serve them if it meant dying. So they the dragons have created this thing called the Limbus, which is this alternate plane that you get pulled into when you die instead of getting moving on to the afterlife. Right. And within the Limbus, your character undergoes some kind of challenge. If you escape the other side, your character will wake up in your camp or in a graveyard, and you can keep playing from there. You're still like a little woozy and sick for like an hour after you resurrect, but the Limbus brings people back from the dead when they die. And the Limbus is also just like a really fun, cool experience. It's one of the coolest things you can do at DrachenFest.
Thanks,
so you actually
Jason.
It's just okay. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, Jason runs it, so with a great team. You should try to die though, honestly. It's fun to survive the whole week, but it's more fun to die and see what's going on in the Limbus because there's just it's a cool experience and it's secret. Mm-hmm. Like you can only find out what it is by going there, right? And no one, your character can't talk about what happened when you're there. So like, and we ask you like out of game, like don't tell anybody.
So ultimately, I don't have to pack a backup character.
No, but it is I will say it's a cool set piece. It's a very cool place.
Can you tell me, as a new player, I've bought my ticket, what do I need to do between now and the event?
One good thing to do is to meet your campmates. When you got your ticket, you got a email with a link to the different camp discords. It'd be good to step in there and introduce yourself. These are discords that are run by players. Each camp has their own.
And I can decide which camp my character is going to belong to by just going to the website, just reading the information about each camp, right?
That's right. Yeah, all the info is on the website. That'll help you make a choice. You can also leave undecided for now.
But at some point then, just go join their Discord and start meeting the people that's going to be camping with you.
Meet the people. You're also going to need to figure out how you're getting to the event.
Sure.
So you're going to think about if you need a flight, and then how you're going to, if you take a flight, you're going to probably land at Pittsburgh International. Okay. And then we'll need a ride or an Uber or some way to get to, it's about 40 minutes from the airport, the campsite.
Which is one of the reasons you want to talk to your campmates to see if you can either
share an Uber
or get a ride.
Sure.
And then you want to think about your character and your costume and start putting that stuff together. And also your actual camping gear. You're going to want a tent, because this is an outdoor camping event. So get a tent that you're comfortable with, practice setting it up and breaking it down, make sure you're ready for camping outdoors with it.
Does my tent have to be period appropriate?
No, it doesn't. Every camp has an area for like in period tents, like canvas tents that look like they could be medieval atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And it has a non-decorum area kind of behind that for, if you have nylon bright pink tents that, wouldn't make sense on the set of a fantasy movie, that's fine.
They just put them in a different place altogether.
So they're all together in one part of the camp.
What if I want one of those cool period tents? Like, how can I get one from DrachenFest? Where do I even get one?
We do sell canvas tents. Sales close at the end of January, though, because they have to be manufactured and shipped.
So hurry.
So hurry on that.
Is that on the website?
That's on the website. And then you can also rent tents through some of our partners. You can see links on the website as well.
One final question.
Okay.
At that game that you and Chris ran when you were kids, what was the name of your character?
Oh, no. It was Malaclips.
What was Malaclips like?
What was my first RPG character like?
No. I want to know what the one in that made-up game that you and Chris ran together was like with the sticks.
I had a cape. I had an evil sword that was driving me mad.
Oh, and is that your DrachenFest character now?
It should be.
Do you get to play?
A little bit. During the festival, I get to put on a costume and wander around for a few hours. But no, I'm pretty busy backstage.
When you do you play your German character?
Yeah, my character that's been to the German DrachenFest and is now getting to see this other weird place.
That's incredible.
For Byron, yeah, that's fun.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us and letting us pick your brain a little bit about everything that's going on as we get folks excited and ready to go for DrachenFest. Tickets are on sale now, and the sooner you buy them, the cheaper they are, right?
That's right. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Yep.
Carie, Jason, and I are returning from the Drachenlands. What did you think? That was pretty amazing, right? Dan's great.
Yeah, I really like talking to Dan.
Yeah.
All right, before we leave the DrachenPod, I have a question.
Okay.
Oh.
How did you all hear about this? About DrachenFest?
So that's very interesting because even back when we were doing the podcast, I had talked to Dan about this idea of, this big festival LARP he wanted to start in the United States. And, we kicked it around for a little bit, but the reality was between the 2 or 3 people that we talked to, we just didn't really have the skills that were needed, especially at the time. And then a few years later, he starts Damarung with that group that he needed. And Damarung, after its run, he was able to finally start DrachenFest. And he reached out and said, is this something you would be interested in helping out with? And then one thing after another, I got involved in Limbus. And then I did it for a few years.
And then he wouldn't stop talking about it.
I'm trying to, yeah.
That is very, very true.
Right?
Well, we had just kind of wrapped up at a similar time. Most of the LARPs that we played in kind of ended, and then COVID happened. And so your involvement there sort of happened as we were starting to feel the gaping hole, the lack
itch.
of LARPs.
The LARP itch.
And you asked us if we would come help, and so we did. I helped in Limbus for the first 2 years, and now I'm the marketing coordinator. And
Now I'm the design lead. There.
Huh?
All right.
I will say one thing that, and years ago we talked about in the podcast, but I think most of us were pretty burnt out at that time because we'd went through so much, even the relatively positive experience of underground theater when we all had, we're doing stuff in that.
Right.
But it had become overwhelming. All those years of running and playing LARPs and all the bad stuff starts to add up to you.
Right.
And the experience of DrachenFest has really helped me deal with that burnout.
It's definitely a palate cleanser.
Yes.
well, we've all been LARPing for decades, and so we've definitely got a lot of experience and a lot of different LARPs behind us. And I can say for myself that DrachenFest is unlike any of them that I have ever been a part of.
Absolutely.
I agree. It is much more refreshing and easy to be a part of than any other organization I've been part of. Even ones that I feel like were well run.
I think that the uniqueness of DrachenFest is something that is an incredibly wonderful and amazing thing to experience. And sometimes it can also make it a little bit more difficult for those of us who have LARPed a long time to really kind of grasp and embrace the open world and the yes and the collaboration that happens at DrachenFest. It's sort of like this amazing, wonderful thing that can also be a little bit gray and hard to wrap our brains around. But I hope that with this podcast, we'll be able to help everybody jump on board and arrive and get right in and involved and love the game as much as we do.
Yeah, because as soon as it clicks, it clicks.
Well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Woo!